our United States Constitution, currently there is a revised war on drugs. The United States government lost the war on drugs quite some time ago. Fact is that Americans really, really enjoy using drugs, and that's why we have so many people using drugs, buying drugs, selling drugs in the United States. It's amazing like that, isn't it? Most people are confined to alcohol and tobacco, which kill more citizens, have killed more citizens in the hundreds of thousands every year than any other drug. Car accidents as well still kill more people. And but guns, right? We have approximately about on average about 30,000 Christian on Christian murders every year in the United States, right? Um, and well, I grew up working on fishing boats in the Pacific Ocean back when the war on drugs was in full bore and went militant the first time, right? And the fishing boat I worked on, we were boarded 3 times a week, easily, if not more, for drug interdiction. See if we were smuggling, see if we had drugs in our ice bins and things like that. We were a charter boat, so we would dock up on the bait boat and things like that, and so you might think we were transferring bales of stuff, whatever. But did you know drugs float and fishing equipment doesn't? If you ever sank your boat while you were fishing, you lost all your gear, right? But if you've ever seen anyone trying to flush, for instance, marijuana down a toilet, it doesn't work. Or as we know, that what do they call the bales of cocaine that float up onto the Florida coast? There's a funny name they use for that when you find one of those. But any drugs basically are packaged into a bale, sealed from air. Well, they still have a content of air inside of them, which is going to be an overall what's the term? Specific gravity is going to be lower than water. It's going to float. All right. Now I know that's really tough for a MAGA to understand that a substance can be lighter than water. But yes, drugs float. All right. So when we blow up a boat and say it's a drug boat, there should be drugs floating afterwards, right? So this is about as realistic as saying there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Remember that one? The weapons, we know where they are, we know who has them, we know it's the exact same fucking words that Hegseth just said about these. We know who's in the boats, we know what they're doing, we know where they're going, and then they show us fuzzy black and white photos, right? And wasn't that Colin Powell? They showed us the fuzzy photos of the trucks and say these are weapons of mass destruction, right? So, funny thing, somebody recently commented on one of my videos that I say right and talking to people in the third person, and it's some sort of new thing that they just noticed. But I started thinking about, it's like, I've been saying that for decades, and then I started looking at old videos that other people talking about, like treasure stories and stuff like that, right? It's a question of affirmation. Anyhow, the right is wrong. So we have long standing use of quote unquote drug intervention by the right. Nixon was the first one to really put the war on drugs into full bore mode so he could prosecute political enemies and say that these people are immoral because, well, you can say they're defending drug lords, where in fact Donald Trump just released a drug lord and is accusing people in fuzzy pictures who are known fishermen. All right, so what I'm talking about here is a rule of law under our Constitution. And so we have a whole bunch of these maggots that are saying that we have a war going right now, and there's literally, it requires an act of Congress to declare war. It requires an authorization of Congress for military action. So all of this stuff to begin with, right, is criminal to begin with, right? Hegseth went and gathered all of the generals together and said, we're going to no longer abide by the rules of engagement, which means we're going to fight illegally. Okay, that's literally what he said. A whole bunch of people quit because they refused to do that, right? But You can't have an act of war when there is no war declared by Congress. Okay, they can't retrospectively declare war, right? The president cannot declare war. That's why we have a president and not a king, right? So if they're saying that Trump declared war, then they're saying we have a king, and they completely hate and disregard the United States Constitution. It's really plain and simple. This is like the furthest end of exposure of the cult, how insane these people fucking are, that they would profess that saying don't follow illegal orders is a war crime and sedition, right? So again, we're not at war. There's no declaration of war. So any military action is an extrajudiciary murder, literally. Okay, there's no rule of law. This is no different than gang coming into your house and just killing your children because they want what you possess. All right, remember weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? Fuzzy black and white photos. We're going after them. Congress actually gave an authorization that time, but there was no declaration of war through any of that, right? And MAGA literally ran on no new wars. Yet here we are. We've had multiple military engagements, spending billions and trillions of dollars on military. We're funding other countries' militaries. We're about to provide another $60 billion to Israel. Don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-Semitic. I love my Jewish friends. I respect the Jewish religion. As all other religions, I believe every religion is false and nonsense. Okay, but people have this little toy they play with and they need it. You can't take their toys away. Religion's this psychological toy they play with. But unfortunately, I actually believe it's all mass psychosis, right? The morning gourds, no white, how you doing? It's like you literally faith is defined as an irrational belief in the impossible, right? So people who rely on quote unquote faith to move forward in their thinking begin with an irrational point of view, right? And so it's really, really hard to convince somebody who starts in an irrational status of mindset that, hey, what you're talking about ain't correct, it ain't right, this is wrong, you're literally getting joyful about murdering people who have not gone through any form of vetting as to whether or not they've actually done anything illegal. Again, I started out talking about how I grew up working on fishing boats in the Pacific Ocean. We were boarded by Coast Guard at least 3 times a week in interventions, and we did stuff where we would tie up with other boats, right, outside of the port. We're in a larger boat because it was a bait boat trawler. They would go out and catch bait. We would meet them at a float dock where they would tie up. We would tie up. We would load. Sometimes we sat there for hours waiting, right? Okay, so somebody who was overzealous in their job would look at that and say, hey, looks like these guys are loading drugs. Okay, we never got blown up because rule of law, right? Just like the cops can't come into our house without a warrant, right? There's procedural, legal means of going about doing things, all right? So a lot of people are like, fucking crazy. I've never been a Democrat. And I've also, before I came to Utah to run the inmate fire crews for the state of Utah, dealing with real criminals, right? And understanding their rationality and trying to get them motivated to become good citizens, which I did. I had the lowest recidivism rate out of any program in the United States ever, with the 77 guys I worked with over 2 years, rehabilitating them with work program and treating them like human beings. Because most of these people had never been treated as human beings in their entire fucking life, right? So I really don't understand how people can be so irrational in their thought process, though, as to think that extrajudiciary murder by military is an okay thing, especially when their entire program that they ran on was saying no new wars, right? It's just fucking beyond me. And then at the same time, we're saying, oh, these guys in the fishing boats, they're drug carriers, but the president literally just pardoned the biggest drug trafficker ever convicted in the United States under less than 1 year of his 46-year sentence. How does that fucking work? Trump literally just pardoned a guy whose business and drugs literally killed thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans, caused many other to make choices in their lives that led them to go to jail for long periods of time, right? Completely destroying large quantities of American productivity, and Trump just let him out, right? It's fucking insane. By the way, the guy fell asleep how many? 6 times during his cabinet meeting, right? Anyhow, so chain of command starts with the president and goes down, right? So all this illegal orders goes right back to Don, and eventually we're going to have a different Supreme Court, and they're going to change the current status of the king being immune to all actions that they take. Eventually, the power is going to shift like it always does. If you watch a stream, there's nothing that can stop it from changing its course. It corrects the energy flow. When it offsets to one direction, the energy always corrects itself and quite often swings further to the other direction. Personally, I don't want extremism on either end, but eventually all of this is going to become brought out, the entire chain of command from top to bottom, all the communications. And yes, the pilot pulling the trigger is just following orders has never been any sort of excuse for a war crime, or in this case, there's no war, so it's just straight murder, right? Calling people out and saying that reading words from the Universal Military Code of Conduct, stating that it's illegal for you don't have to follow illegal orders. That's not sedition. That is being an actual patriot here in the United States. It is our rule of law under a constitution, right? And MAGA will just close their fucking ears, close their eyes, cover their mouth, and say, I trust my government. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, 25-year war. Right? So it's literally what's going on here right now. As we got a bunch of fucking fascist idiots running our country. They can't even spell secretary right. Unless the most awesomest would be possibly there is somebody in the White House who fucking did that on purpose. The SS Secretary of War. But we don't have a Secretary of War. But that just right there tells you exactly what their mindset is. We're going to go kill people. We're going to go instigate conflict. We're going to, right? We'll carry a big stick. Walk softly. Anyone who would give up their rights of freedom for some psychological felt sense of security deserves neither. Mr. Franklin quote, right? I don't know. Algorithm doesn't give me a whole lot of folks to talk to. I don't have a phone number for you to call in and have debate with. So I just had to get it off my chest that this is fucking insanity. Hegseth is definitely committing murder and war crimes along the chain of command. If there's a war declared of some sort, there's no evidence of that. If there's actually drugs on those boats, they've not shown us any evidence of that, right? And meantime, Donald Trump is still protecting pedophiles. It's fucking mind-boggling. None of these people are qualified. We could just look at that right now. They're calling the judges who threw out Alina Habba's appointment as being corrupt when they're following the Constitution. So proof that MAGA just is ignorant and hates our Constitution, hates freedom, hates the rule of law, right? They just want their authoritarianism to go through. So and literally on the entire the Comey Letitia James cases is pretty clearly laid out that to begin with, Habba was illegally appointed. There is no structure in our law to just have multiple interim attorneys appointed, right? That's illegal. You can't do that. That's not how it works. You're allowed one interim appointment, and you have to, and that only is it 160 days or something? It's only a half a year. I don't know the exact number of days, but it has a limited amount of time that appointment is valid, and then under our Constitution, you've got to have Senate approval for those appointments. Okay, so Alina Habba was not an attorney general, period, for the district she was allegedly appointed to. That is a non-existent position under the rule of law. You can't just appoint somebody, tell them they have to illegally prosecute somebody with made up shit, right? Because the dictator Donald doesn't like that person and doesn't like what they did to him for him being an actual criminal, right? So jury of peers literally convicted the Donald for these crimes. And then he turns around and accuses the people who were doing their job as federal or state employees, right? And prosecutors who have like their entire lives dedicated to the rule of law under our Constitution. And the guy who was a career prosecutor who was appointed as this state attorney or federal attorney said there is no case here. There is absolutely nothing illegal these people did. All right, so Trump fires him and appoints his real estate lawyer who's never done a single trial in her life. All right, the grand jury rejected the initial indictment, and she submitted an altered indictment that was never seen by the entire grand jury, right? And that was the indictment that came down on Comey. But now we're past the statute of limitations on that, so they can't legally re-indict him on any of these charges that they're making up. Again, the grand jury said there's nothing here until she changed it and then came back with a illegal, altered, false bill of indictment. Okay? Can't make this shit up, but the MAGA just go, our king, our leader, our God king appointed her and she's worthy of the appointment. And like, no, we have a constitution and a rule of law. You can't just fucking make shit up and do whatever the fuck you want. That's fascism, authoritarianism, and not freedom, right? But it's a republic. Republic is a subset of democracy, all right? I can break out the dictionary right here and show you that in order to define republic, you have to use the word democracy, right? But republic is not used to define democracy because republic is a specialized democracy, not a simple or a complex democracy, not a simple democracy, right? Simple democracy really only works with about 100 people, but even then you're going to get people who think they're above and beyond and try and utilize manipulation or force to control others. Right? How about the emoluments clause? How about that emoluments clause? Let's look at the pile of gold bars that belong to the people of the United States in the office of the president, not Donald Trump, that's sitting on the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. Right below the Declaration of Independence that the fucktard idiot Sleepy Don, rapist and child molester Trump, grab him by the pussy wife raper, does not understand that our Declaration of Independence was 190 years before. I'm not doing the math right there. 1776. Yeah, no, 110 years before the Civil War. Right? Trump believes the Declaration of Independence and the Civil War are connected. There's multiple video of him live in the Oval Office declaring that declaration. We have an illiterate dude running the country, manipulating people on fear, hate, and emotions. Zero rule of law whatsoever. It's fucking insane. The number of Ronald Wilson Reagan's name, 666. We believe the coming resurrection of Ronald will be the Joseph Mankiewicz. I don't know. Joe, are you a maggot, Joe? Are you being fecalacious and satirical? That sounds like satire to me, but I don't know. I used to get a whole bunch of maggots in my talks when I was talking about weed, and they would inundate my entire speech or talk about weed and sidetrack it. And so I don't talk it. I don't do any politics on my weed talks anymore. Try not to talk weed in my politics talks, but that's a great one right there. The war on drugs, right? They're trying to revise this war on drugs, and people in America like them. And why? Why do people in America need to escape reality? Because it sucks pretty fucking bad here, right? You get sick, you lose your home, you go broke, you got to live on the street, and then all of a sudden now it's illegal to be homeless. You know, even though they don't pay a living wage, the wages are less than what a slave took to take care of and keep healthy and productive. Literally, the slave owner was required to feed their beast of burden, house and clothe them, right? And if they got sick, they took care of the medical, okay? Because it was an investment. Uh, here today, our overlords, our corporate overlords, do not pay the cost of existing on this earth to the laborers, the wage slaves, the tax slaves. You're not a Nazi, huh? Well, if you're starting out like that, maybe you are. Just don't know it. Uh, interesting, Joe. Well, we're not. Ron Reagan was a saint compared to fucking Donald Trump. I have no idea who you are or what you, but Ron Reagan was a saint compared to Donald Trump. I'll tell you that, right? And his wife's war on drugs was saintly compared to Melania's. What the fuck? Melania was a hooker for a fucking foreign male or wife or rich people. It's just fucking mind-boggling how fucking cult MAGA gets. I've never been a Democrat, by the way. Definitely have never been a Republican. Anyhow, yeah. So I actually was able to rehabilitate some of the worst criminals in Utah. These guys, I had murderers, drug dealers, I had fraudsters. We didn't have any child. No, we had a cook that was a child molester, but they weren't allowed on the fire crew. And we didn't have any sexual offenders, right? But when I had people who were atheist, Christian, Muslim. I had a Vietnamese guy who came over. This is one of the craziest fucking stories. This is how fucked up America is. This guy lost most of his family from the Vietnam War. He was a little fucking kid, being persecuted because his family was on the other side of Vietnam, and somehow the dude was put on a boat. It was an empty oil tanker that was coming from Vietnam and went to Canada. Okay, and when they found the boat floating off the coast of Canada, there was like 270 dead people and one living child, and it was this guy who was on my inmate fire crew. The hell was it? Vu. Vu is what he went by. VW. No, VU. Right. So somehow he made it in the U.S., but he was not able to get a job. He wasn't. He was above. I believe he was above the age. What the fuck was it? I'm not even sure. I think he was a little kid. Whatever it was, he got put into foster systems. He got. He was not treated right, and ended up getting running with some of the wrong people and getting into gangs and stuff. And I think he was in for moving some drugs, right? Making some money because it costs a hell of a lot to live here in the United States and just be alive, right? And this guy though, he was catching. We would go fishing. We were doing work, for instance, on the Green River, putting fences in on riparian zones where they run cattle and keeping the fisheries intact. And this guy would catch a big old trout and literally just fucking bite its head off and rip out the guts with his finger. right? It was pretty amazing, dude, and all. And one day we saw there was a dog kept coming up barking at us, and we were miles in the middle of nowhere. We had no idea where it was at. He's like, "Dog, dog, good food," and he goes after it. But one day we was working way up in the fucking mountains, up in so well, all these guys got attitude, right? They all looked at me in suspicion because I was part of the program, I was part of the man, I was part of the authority that keeps them down, right? But and first I was almost murdered by the inmate crew on the second month that I started working with them, and they didn't like the fact that I was disciplining them towards being wildland firefighters, right? And when you treat somebody as a professional instead of an inmate, right? Because they would always pull this shit like, yeah, don't be, I'm just doing my time. Don't be, I'm just an inmate. I'm just a stupid inmate. It's like, no, you're not. You wouldn't be here, right? It's crazy how I'm losing watchers as I teach this shit. Saint Pinos is Tyler Robinson's roommate. What the fuck, dude, are you talking about? How psychotic are you to come in my chat and ask me if I'm Tyler Robinson's roommate? By the way, Tyler didn't shoot the guy. If you really want to come, right? Um, there's no way the trajectory, the hole in Kirk's neck is the exit wound. The best video I see shows um, shit coming out of the back of his head before coming out of the front of his neck. And the trajectory from the roof is all wrong. All the video dude on the roof is manipulated. The Mauser in the woods, you can't break that gun down and put it back together in the time frame without a screwdriver. Period. That's all a big fucking lie. So, no, I'm not Tyler's roommate, and I never was. I've never been in a prison. I've been in some county jail. Never been. I've been in jail on false accusations by crazy people, and I know very well how just repeating false accusations can cause a very good person to be made to look not good, right? I literally 18 false 911 calls were made on me by my crazy neighbor in a 12-month period, right? So, and that's part of how when I was in jail, I actually ended up being cartels. Somebody told the cartels that I was a federal agent and there's a snitch. Kind of crazy, right? And they were going to murder me in the county jail. There was 22 of them in the ward I was in. And I went off to a in-person court hearing, came back, and some of the people who knew me from being a firefighter were in there, and they told the cartel guys that, man, you don't know nothing about this guy. That's the Power Ranger. The 23 of you walk into that yard, him is going to walk back into the building, the rest of you are going to stay there. And they fucking gave me I come back at the house mouse, handed me a peace treaty from the cartels asking forgiveness, right? I didn't ask the Aryan Brotherhood for protection. Fuck white supremacists. Fuck you for even suggesting such a stupid fucking thing, dude. Like, how pathetic of a human being are you? Go troll yourself, man. This is hilarious. Fucking white supremacy. Oh, by the way, I'm whiter than you will ever fucking dream of being. My ancestry is as white as it gets, right? And you know what? White people get cancer from the sun, just being outdoors. There's nothing supreme about white people, except for their fucking egos. Fucking huge ass fucking egos people have. Holy shit. No, I had respect from the Muslim Brotherhood, the Aryan Brotherhood, as well as the Mexicans, the blacks, and everybody respected me because I gave them respect as a human being. And that's the problem with the fucking Reich, MAGA fucking troll idiots, right? You want respect, you got to give respect, right? And you come in here and try and disrespect me, you're going to get disrespected right back. It's pretty fucking simple. But back to Vu, right? Because he was one of my inmate firefighters. He was my firefighter. He was my crew. He was one of my tools in my toolkit. I respected him for being a human being. And when they had issues that was brainwashed into them about being some sort of low-life inmate, I corrected them and informed them that they were human beings and my firefighters. And you see, there's a huge difference here. There's something called the law. The the golden rule. Okay? It is the one thread that runs through all, the one true thread, the one binding golden rule that holds the truth that lies under every religion. Okay? The golden rule, the only commandment that Jesus gave you. When asked, what is the greatest commandment? He replied, to love God and your brother as if yourself, to do unto others as you would have for them to do for you. Okay? And that's how I treated Vu, the almost dead immigrant from Vietnam who became lost in the new world because it fucking can suck here if you don't have the privilege or the access or know the people who are going to fucking make the shit happen for you. Okay? And the good old boy system is fucking lame. I'm sorry, not sorry. Okay? So Vu wasn't part of the good old boy system, but the thing that changed his entire fucking attitude, his entire reality, his entire mindset was the day I saved his life from drowning again. Okay? And we were up in the high mountains above Joe's Reservoir in central Utah doing a project where we quite often would cut trees with chainsaws. I had 77044 chainsaws that I maintained. Personally, I ran a Stihl 268, right? But I took care of all the chainsaws, and I would break them down in the field and rebuild them, and I kept a couple of extras while I had 22 inmates. I had 2 guys carrying food, gas, and oil, and water. And the other 20 would run saws all day, and that many saws running means they break down, so I would repair them in the field. I had a field kit. I could tear apart the entire thing right there. I kept parts and everything, right? So we were out cutting trees, and part of the deal that day was I decided that we were going to do a part of my team building and teaching and rehabilitation programs was ropes courses. So in my college, I did ropes courses. I built ropes courses. I ran ropes courses. I taught ropes courses. If you don't know what a ropes course is, it's a system of challenges that cause you to invoke your greatest skills physically and mentally to solve the equation for X. And they're non-lethal. Some of them have fear factor in them, but you have to have safety implements included so you don't hurt somebody, right? When you go into the high ropes courses, you use harnesses and stuff and safety nets and all of that to keep people from getting hurt, but you teach people to trust themselves and each other and work together to solve the problem. And so there was one that's called the raft, right? And usually you do this on dry land as a supposition and just scenario that you make up and say, hey, do this, right? So with the raft, we happen to be at a location with a high elevation lake. And so I entreated the fellas like, okay, we're actually going to build rafts. And here's the scenario. You're stuck on an island. You've got to go ahead and save yourselves. There's a storm coming in and this whole island's going to get flooded away. So you need to build a raft and get out to this other island over here. And it needs to be able to float at least 2 of you so that one person can get delivered and another person bring the raft back to get the next guy. Okay. They were given 1 fire axe Pulaski. They were given like 6-inch spikes and I think like a 10-inch length of parachute cord and told to build the raft from the materials laying around the lake. There's a whole bunch of driftwood. And they went at it and they built the rafts and they worked and both the teams succeeded, did the task and then the cooks yelled dinner and everyone ran off except for a couple of guys decided like, hey, let's go swimming. And I had to start walking away when the shouts came up and there was Vu was drowning. He was strapped muscle like you wouldn't believe. These guys would work out, they would eat all the protein they could get, and this guy was strapped lean, less than 10% body fat, and he went into that cold water and all of his muscles locked up into cramps and he started sinking like a rock. And he was shoving the other guy swam out there and he was doing the classic shoving other people under the water and all of that, right? But luckily I was trained as a lifeguard in my youth. I used to work on fishing boats and etc. So part of my abilities were, I yelled at the guys to back away from him and I swam up the way you do, completely underneath him and came up from behind and grabbed him and calmed him, right? Okay, so that was the day that Vu no longer was a criminal. And his gratitude for me for saving his life the second time from drowning or dying in the water was sufficient to get him to understand that golden rule. Okay. First you get the money, then you get now. And see, that's just the power of Moloch. That's the power of Babel. That's no. The the Christ told you to give away all your possessions to the poor and do service, and that's the true power, right? You think you have power in the flesh, you're greatly mistook. And the power is far above and beyond what you do in your flesh. Here on in the meat suit and thinking that you have possession and power, that is a mental health issue, right? And true power, true knowledge is power, most powerful when shared with others. Everything is more powerful when the energy flows. Trying to contain energy into one place is never a good thing, and the belief that money equates to power is psychotic. It's a sickness. Some people have so much money, that's all they have. So much money, it's all you have. They're so poor, all they have is money. Right? Trump is one of those. The more money he gets, the poorer he gets. His mind is fucking addled. He's losing it. Anyone who still follows that is a minion of Satan. The dark Lord has got you by the fucking balls. You're disregarding the entire rule of law for irrational belief in non-provable concepts. That's what religion's faith is. But I tell you what, that the golden rule is as real as it gets, and that's provable. All right, that fits the law of thermodynamics. The law of thermodynamics is truth and understanding. Once you understand the laws of thermodynamics, you understand that chasing materialism. It's nice to be comfortable, sure. But at what expense to other people's lack of comfort does your comfort come? Mr. Phineas, what do you think you're a saint of, Phineas? Do you even know the golden rule? Or do you go to the Old Testament for your beliefs and irrational thoughts, right? I bet you know one or two verses of Leviticus and completely disregard the rest of it, as most people who identify as so-called Christians do, completely disregarding the one commandment that your Christ gave you. Right? You probably have no fucking clue that Yahweh was a lesser storm god of the pantheon of deities that came out of Samaria and before the big daddy known as Abraham left where the religion of the Anunnaki ruled. Yeah. The Yahweh replaced Adonai. Who's Adonai? And Adonai had a wife, right? These are all lesser gods of the pantheon under El in Mesopotamia, right? But you identify as a Christian and you cite Leviticus to hate people who are different than you. Meanwhile, you've never sold a child for a goat, have you? Which it also says to do in the Old Testament. Yeah. It's kind of crazy like that. Anyhow, shooting boats in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or Atlantic or the Caribbean in open waters is murder. Show me some actual facts above and beyond the weapons of mass destruction that we invaded Iraq over, and I'll give it to you. But without any facts and knowledge or information that shows us that there was literally Again, I'll go back to where I started this talk. I grew up working on a fishing boat. My first job was on a fishing boat, and I worked on it for about 3 years off and on, and we were boarded 3 times a week by the Coast Guard and drug intervention during the most militarized portion of America's war on drugs here in the United States. Helicopters flying all over Northern California. In fact, on the streets as a child, I was stopped multiple times a week by police just because they wanted to search me. Totally illegal shit. In fact, and before that, I was thinking about this morning, how I grew up in a very affluent neighborhood, and we all rode our bikes. There was a group of like 15 kids that would ride our bicycles to school, and some of us were as much as 3 miles away, and we would take the safest routes we possibly could, which was through the residential neighborhoods that now consist of $3 million homes, right? And the house I lived in is now over $3 million home that I grew up on, with a full acre, completely landscaped with orchards and a swimming pool. They've now made that house was 2,000 square or 4,000 when I lived in it, grew up, and I think it's 6,000 square feet now. All right, so I was part of the community of affluence, yet the people who lived in the houses near the school had such a pathetic fucking life that they didn't like seeing the kids riding the bike down the street. So they would call the police, and the police would come and harass us. That would happen twice a fucking week just for riding our bikes down the street in a super conservative, authoritarian city that had an overly large police force that was idle half of the year because it was set up for the Santa Anita racetrack. Okay. So I spent a lot of time as a kid in the stalls at Santa Anita. Most of my friends were either or their parents either owned horses or were jockeys or trainers. Okay, and they had this massively oversized police force because the track brought in some undesirables. People would come in drunk and stuff like that. So yeah, we got harassed all the fucking time, right? Same shit happened when my dad moved towards the beach. Just walking down the street, we would get harassed just for walking around the neighborhood. Fucking insane. We were white kids, right? Definitely, I can tell you about the one time, though, when I was dressed in my private school clothes, getting off the bus in a mixed neighborhood just east of East LA called Montebello, where there was a white and an African American police officer in the car, and I had just purchased. Probably I had 1.5 ounces of weed on me at the time. It would have been jail sentence at that time in 1986 or 7 when the militarized war on drugs was at its height. And I just smoked a joint, which I've now sued the federal government as a First Amendment right. You might not understand that, but the rule of law under our Constitution provides for us to redress the government for First Amendment rights, right? Which it says in your Bible that God made all the plants and said they were good. Walked right past that police car, and they had a canine unit that was doing his job. He started barking at me. He cited me. He marked me for having drugs. And the police officer, seeing a white kid in private school clothes, started smacking the dog and telling it to shut up. Talk about white privilege, right? Anyhow, so, having been a federal officer myself, having been in jail on false accusations, I have a pretty good stance of citing the bullshit going on here with blowing people out of the fucking water who are hanging on for dear life after just out of the blue getting blown up in their boat by like we don't have the ability to fucking stop these boats and do the thing that is right, the thing that you would want done to you as a human being if you were mistakenly thought to be, maybe you are a drug dealer and maybe you just need to be treated like a human being to rehabilitate and not do that, right? But let's get back to the point, like why don't we arrest and jail people who hire illegal workers? See, if we did not have people hiring illegally undocumented workers, which and those employers are not only stealing from the government by not paying the payroll taxes on these people, right? They're stealing from U.S. citizens who don't get those jobs, as well as they're stealing from the entire economy by paying less money for the labor, right? So there's less cash flow to be taxed by internal revenue in the long run anyhow, okay? So literally like the people coming in, and if they got false documentation, then they're paying payroll taxes, right? But they're still getting paid less. So it's still less taxes. But there's actually the illegal alien undocumented workers in this country, between payroll and sales tax, contribute billions and billions of dollars a year. Okay? Donald Trump doesn't pay any taxes. I figured out how to not pay taxes. I just don't make any money. It's pretty simple. You don't earn any money, you can't tax you. That's I can't work anymore anyhow, so what the fuck. I did manage to get off the pain finally. It took me random people watching. I don't know, I got one person watching. I've broken my neck twice. I have severe advanced degenerative issues. And I went to work doing construction last month. It lasted 3 weeks before the pain was too much, and they diagnosed me with severe nerve damage and put me on new pills. And it took a week and a half. Yesterday was the first day I woke up and went right to work in the house, getting shit taken care of, cleaning the kitchen again and shit, where my whole body isn't just, this fucking sucks, right? You know, it's crazy here. So I have no medical, I have no pension, I have nothing. I dedicated my life to this country and civil service, and I have zero. There's like $230 in my federal retirement. The whole system's really, really fucked up here in this country, right? My body is all broken down from providing service to the rest of our nation's citizens, and I struggle daily trying to figure it out. But the other thing is, we're so fucking wealthy. I am making money off of other people's trash at this point. The richest people I knew as a child owned a garbage company, and my dad always said there's cash and trash, and my new gig is recycling jewelry from thrift shops. And here's a $2,000 watch I paid $13 for. That's a Cartier, and it's a smaller tank. And this is probably a 1970s version, but it has all the hallmarks and it's solid silver. And I could probably get $600 for it in its condition right now, a little refurbished, and it's a $1,200 to $2,000 item. Here's another thrift shop score. People literally just give this stuff away, and the thrift shop recycles it, and I buy it for pennies on the dollar. That's a antique gold watch right there. It's probably got $300 worth of gold in it, and I paid $70 for it. Anyhow, they're going to tell me I'm in business at some point, and I'm going to laugh at them. Ain't no fucking business. I'm surviving here in this shithole. So, yes, Pete Hegseth is a war criminal. Everyone who abided the illegal orders to murder people, non-combatants in the middle of the ocean, international waters, or other countries' waters, this is fucking insane. And you know, people are cheering this on, saying that it's okay to kill people without the rule of law. That's just warming up to killing American citizens and military action here. They keep pushing this button. They keep pushing this envelope. It's fucking insane. I've been wanting to get a gun for self-defense. I have one. I've had it since I was 8 years old. And I hit what I shoot at, but a pocket pistol would be nice. Because essentially one of these psychos is they're gonna, look, this guy's seditious. Look, he's talking sedition. No, I'm talking our Constitution. But they've completely disregarded our Constitution. So, well, to the one person hanging out, appreciate you. I'm gonna get on with my day. I ranted enough. Hopefully somebody learned something hearing what I had to say. I know there's a whole bunch of people who watch this and just go, that guy's psycho, because they're projecting their own inability to use cognitive capacity. Peace out. Have a great day. Go out in the world, make it a better place with the meat suit you was given to do it in. See you on the flip side. I might do some more, but this shit about this Hegseth shit, drunk hire, DUI hire, fucking Secretary of War. That's all you got to know is when they start calling themselves aggressive warriors instead of defenders of freedom. Later.